They thought it was just another abandoned building, another playground for thrill seekers, ghost hunters, and adrenaline junkies chasing shadows in the dark. But what they found inside Ridgewater Asylum wasn't graffiti or broken furniture. It was something older, something buried, something that was never meant to be found. Two young explorers walked in with cameras. Only one came out. And the footage he recovered? It was so disturbing, he deleted the entire YouTube channel before vanishing from the internet completely. This is the story of what they uncovered. This is the Untold Trace, and I am your host. And tonight, we take you deep into the forgotten hallways of a place long erased from maps, memories, and official history. It's Ridgewater Asylum, a name that sends a chill through anyone over 40 in the quiet town of Red Hollow. Built in 1923, it was meant to be a beacon of modern psychiatric care, a proud symbol of the state's commitment to mental health. But behind those Gothic stone walls, the promise of healing turned quickly into something much darker. Patients called it the Screaming House. Staff called it the Pit. Local newspapers from the 1930s reported it as overcrowded and underfunded, with a growing number of disappearances and mysterious deaths. But by the 1950s, all media coverage stopped entirely. It's as if the place was wiped clean from public record. Then, in 1971, the asylum abruptly closed its doors. No farewell article, no press release. One night it was open. The next morning, chain gates, boarded windows, silence. The official state file reads only 3 words: facility decommissioned, confidential. For 50 years, Ridgewater Asylum stood untouched, its massive stone silhouette swallowed by forest, hidden behind crumbling brick walls and rusted iron gates. The overgrowth took over like nature was trying to bury the place for good. Locals warned travelers not to go near it. They claimed strange things happened near the gates: flickering lights, sudden nausea, missing time. Teenagers dared each other to spend the night there. None ever made it past the front steps, until Urban Midnight came along. A rising YouTube duo known for exploring abandoned places, Evan and Tyler Monroe had built a cult following documenting ghost towns, empty malls, even forgotten Cold War bunkers. Charismatic, fearless. They prided themselves on going where others wouldn't. When they announced they'd found Ridgewater Asylum, a place many believed had been demolished decades ago, their fans went wild. A teaser video dropped on a Wednesday evening, just 15 seconds long, glimpses of moss-covered corridors, a surgical table in a dark room, scribbled writing on the wall, they never left. It racked up 300,000 views in under 24 hours. But the full video never came. 2 days later, Tyler was found wandering a gas station on the edge of town, barefoot, covered in scratches, barely speaking. Paramedics said he was in shock. He just kept repeating the same phrase over and over. It wasn't empty. It wasn't empty. Evan was never found. When the police went searching for the asylum to investigate the incident, they reported something strange. GPS coordinates given by Tyler led to a dense forest, no building, no ruins, just endless trees. But a few days later, local hikers posted a photo to Reddit of what looked like a crumbling rooftop deep in the woods, almost as if the land itself was trying to swallow the building whole. The post was deleted within an hour. That's when the story started to spread. Some believed Tyler and Evans staged the whole thing for views. Others said the government stepped in and scrubbed the asylum off the grid. But conspiracy forums found something even stranger. Satellite images from 2015 showed a large rectangular structure in the exact area Tyler had described. The same area today? Completely blank. No shape, no structure, just trees. Almost as if someone had digitally removed it. After that, things started to happen. People who searched for Ridgewater online reported odd errors. Browser crashes, blue screens. A local journalist who published a short blog post on the asylum's history reported her entire article vanished within hours, along with all her backups. She said she received a phone call from a blocked number that same night. All it said was, "You weren't supposed to look." But despite the warnings, whispers continued. Someone had posted a screenshot of Evan and Tyler's last video before deletion. Grainy, but clear enough to see writing carved into the wall behind them. He's still here. It wasn't long before internet sleuths began digging into Ridgewater's past. They uncovered a name that kept coming up. Dr. Adrian Wexler, head of the Asylum from 1949 until its closure. A man with no obituary, no retirement records, no known family. One file described him simply as unavailable for contact. Some believe Dr. Wexler continued his experiments underground after the facility closed. Others claim he was never real to begin with, a name created to mask someone else's crimes. But then, a shocking discovery. A private investigator obtained what appeared to be a maintenance map of Ridgewater's basement levels, maps that weren't part of any known blueprints. It showed sealed rooms beneath the main facility, long corridors labeled Isolation W, Project Echo, and one room simply called the Latch. To this day, no one knows what the Latch refers to. But Tyler Monroe's final recorded words, according to paramedics, were, "He opened it." Whatever happened inside Ridgewater Asylum was never meant to see the light of day. A place once designed to treat the broken may have become a cage for something far more sinister. The building may be hidden, forgotten, but something is still inside. And in the next section, we dive into the twisted history of those who were locked away behind those walls. The patients who were never listed, the files that were never filed, and the stories they tried to erase. Stay with us as we uncover what's been buried for decades. Like this video if you're hooked, comment with your theories below, and subscribe to the Untold Trace for the next terrifying chapter. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Because the deeper we go, the darker it gets. They were never on the books. No admission logs, no discharge papers, no trace. Locals called them the lost patients. And if the rumors are even half true, Ridgewater Asylum didn't just treat the mentally ill, it consumed them. When Ridgewater opened in 1923, it was meant to be progressive, a model psychiatric hospital offering care, therapy, and the promise of rehabilitation. The newspapers praised it. The politicians posed in front of it. For a while, the facade held strong. But inside, the halls told a different story. Within 5 years of opening, patients began to disappear. At first, administrators blamed poor record-keeping. Mental institutions of the time were notorious for paperwork failures, mismatched names, misspelled diagnoses, misplaced files. But something about Ridgewater was different. There were too many missing names, too many empty beds, without discharge forms. A decade later, in 1936, a low-level clerk named Wallace Griggs raised concerns in a confidential letter to the state's health department. In it, he wrote, "Patients are being admitted under numbers only. No names, no family contacts. Some are never seen again after their third or fourth night." That letter was never answered. Griggs disappeared 2 weeks later. No resignation letter, no forwarding address, nothing. It was the first documented case of a staff member going missing. But it wouldn't be the last. Over the next 20 years, Ridgewater developed a chilling reputation. Those who worked there long enough often spoke of the silent wing, a hallway in the lower west wing, sealed off to visitors and volunteers. It wasn't on the original blueprints. Only authorized personnel could enter. Patients were sometimes wheeled into that hallway late at night. They never returned to their rooms. One nurse, Margaret Elson, described the experience in her personal diary. "You can hear them through the vents, screaming, praying, and then silence. Always silence after an hour." Margaret's diary was discovered years later in an attic box during the estate sale of her childhood home. She died in 1954. Cause of death: self-inflicted injuries. In town, Ridgewater became a ghost story. Children dared each other to walk up to the gates. Adults lowered their voices when they drove past. Nobody visited willingly. The rumors grew darker over time. They said the asylum conducted deep mind experiments on patients' methods that weren't just unethical, but inhuman. Electroshock therapy without anesthesia, sensory deprivation lasting days, surgical procedures performed in the dark with tools older than the building itself. But the strangest stories of all were about the children. A secret wing, a locked nursery, cries echoing through the halls at night. But Ridgewater had no pediatric unit. Officially, the deeper researchers dig, the more they encounter inconsistencies. In 1947, a census was taken of all state-run facilities. Ridgewater's report listed 62 patients. But internal food supply orders from that same year show enough provisions for over 180. Where were the extra mouths? And why did every order request large amounts of sedatives far beyond what was needed for standard psychiatric treatment? In 1950, the town experienced a cold winter. Pipes froze. A water main broke beneath the asylum. A contractor named Harold Mearns was called in to inspect the foundation. He was inside the building for less than 90 minutes before emerging pale, shaken, and silent. He refused to return. When pressed by the foreman, he whispered, "There are things in those walls. They moved." 3 days later, Harold drove his truck into the river. Authorities ruled it an accident, but his wife swore he was sober, sane, and terrified. She claimed he woke up screaming the night before, shouting one phrase over and over, "They're still there, watching." Then there's the legend of room 237. Never officially marked on any map or door, it appeared in several stories from former orderlies. According to them, it was accessed only through a hidden staircase behind a storage closet. Room 237 was windowless, no lighting, 4 iron restraints embedded into the floor, scratch marks on every wall, no furniture, no toilet, just a floor drain. One janitor claimed he once cleaned the room and saw something inhuman crouched in the corner, thin, pale, silent. But when he reported it, he was told he had entered restricted property and was immediately fired. His name was Joseph Mandrell. He died a year later in a house fire. His entire journal, filled with entries about Ridgewater, was found charred and illegible, except for one surviving sentence: "It doesn't want to leave." Today, Ridgewater is sealed, covered in vines and shadowed by twisted trees. But every few months, someone reports a sound coming from the woods. A cry, a whisper, a knocking. Some say it's the wind. Others say it's the lost patients, still trapped in the walls, still waiting to be heard. One local legend tells of a woman named Sister Miriam, a nun who visited Ridgewater in the 1960s as part of a faith-based charity group. She reportedly spoke out about what she witnessed, claiming patients were being fed things and kept under restraints for weeks. Her final sermon at St. Bartholomew's included the line, "What they're doing in that place is not medicine. It is punishment, and there are screams not meant for this earth." The next day, she disappeared. Her shoes were found at the asylum's gate. Nothing else. And then there's the wall, a concrete section in the silent wing that has no doorway, no markings, and no visible structural purpose. It's thicker than any other wall in the asylum, reinforced from the inside, according to the blueprints. Tyler Monroe, the surviving YouTuber from Urban Midnight, reportedly scrawled one final sentence in a notebook before being committed to a private facility. The wall is not keeping something out, it's keeping something in. In the next chapter, we explore the man behind the curtain, the doctor who ran Ridgewater during its final years. A man whose very existence may be part of the cover-up. Dr. Adrian Wexler. His name haunts the few remaining files. His signature marks dozens of pages, but no one remembers meeting him. No photos, no interviews, no history before 1949. Who was he? And what was he doing beneath Ridgewater Asylum? The secrets are only just beginning to bleed through the cracks. In most institutions, you'll find a paper trail. Letters, receipts, certifications, files that explain who did what and when. But at Ridgewater Asylum, all roads lead to a name no one can verify. A name whispered through hallways like a warning. Dr. Adrian Wexler. His signature appears on patient logs, his orders stamped in red across restricted procedure sheets, his name typed onto requisitions for sedatives, restraints, scalpels. And yet, no photo, no biography, no known address, no obituary. According to the state licensing board, Dr. Adrian Wexler never existed. And yet every surviving document points to him as the asylum's chief medical officer from 1949 until its closure. What happened under his watch remains one of the most chilling medical mysteries ever buried, and may be deliberately erased from public history. In 2009, during renovations of a neighboring property in Red Hollow, a contractor discovered a locked filing cabinet in the crawl space beneath a collapsed wall. Inside, dozens of water-damaged folders stamped RW Psych Internal Only. It was the first and only unauthorized document leak tied directly to Ridgewater Asylum. The papers weren't patient files. They were notes, diagrams, scribbled observations of behavior under headings like Phase 1, Diminished External Stimuli Response, Phase 2, Host Induction and Auditory Synchronization, Phase 3, Neural Partitioning, each one signed AW. The files described tests performed on unregistered subjects. No names, just initials and numbers. Some entries were only a few lines long, clinical and cold. Subject 12B, 36-hour silence successful. Now responds to inaudible stimuli in the 13-15 kH range. Skin temperature decreasing. Subject 24A, began reciting phrases from other patients. No known interaction prior. Eyes remain unresponsive. Other notes were less clinical and far more disturbing. The host is aware, it mimics, it remembers their voices, but I don't think it understands them. Not yet. I hear it even when I leave the building. It follows thought, not body. If the wall breaks, everything falls. These weren't standard medical observations. These were the ravings of a man documenting something far beyond psychiatry. Hidden deep within the bundle was a crude hand-drawn map of Ridgewater's sub-basement, levels not found in any state records or fire inspections. The blueprint showed a network of tunnels and sealed rooms. One stood out, a room labeled in smeared ink, the latch. We mentioned it briefly in Section 1, but now let's go deeper. Based on analysis by structural engineers, the latch appeared to be a sealed chamber buried beneath the west wing, the same area locals referred to as the silent wing. The room was completely cut off. No door, no air vents, just solid reinforced concrete. The files suggest it was constructed last, after Ridgewater had already begun to decline, which raises a terrifying question. Why would a crumbling institution with failing infrastructure pour resources into building a reinforced, inaccessible vault beneath its least used wing? One of Wexler's final entries provides a chilling clue. And the containment holds. The subjects slow, lose shape, but the noise remains. The latch must remain shut, always. What was he trying to contain? In 2017, a former demolition consultant named Thomas Verney came forward with a story he had kept hidden for nearly 2 decades. In 1998, he was part of a 3-man crew hired anonymously to survey Ridgewater's foundations for potential demolition. He claimed that they were escorted by 2 plainclothes men who refused to identify themselves, but had keys to every part of the asylum. Thomas said they were brought through the western wing, past rusted gurneys, walls clawed with deep scratches, and finally into the lower levels. There they saw a steel wall, unlike anything else in the building. Newer, polished, reinforced with what looked like military-grade bolts. No seams, no hinges, just a single metal plate welded into place. One of the escorts handed Thomas a clipboard and said, "You didn't see this. Mark it as non-structural." Thomas never returned. He claimed the other 2 men on the crew later died under strange circumstances, one from an aneurysm, the other in a fire. Thomas changed his name and moved across the country. When asked why he finally came forward, he said, "Because I still hear it. When it rains, I hear the knocking." Even more chilling is the rumor that Teller Monroe, one half of the Urban Midnight Channel, briefly entered this sealed room. His recovered footage is gone, but according to an ER nurse who examined him shortly after he was found wandering barefoot at a gas station, he kept whispering the same thing in a trance-like state. He's not dead. He just learned to whisper through the walls. We don't know what Tyler saw inside the latch. We may never know. But a psychological report leaked later showed his pupil dilation levels were inconsistent with any known psychoactive agent. And an MRI scan revealed changes to his auditory cortex, as if it had been overstimulated beyond human limits. As for Dr. Wexler, there are no known photos of the man, no obituary, no address, no family. But one final breadcrumb exists. An employee ID card was discovered in 2020 during a local metal detecting sweep on the outskirts of Red Hollow. Faded, burnt, bent nearly in half, but visible beneath the corrosion was a name. Adrian Wexler, Level 6 clearance, Ridgewater Asylum research access only. The photo portion of the card had been violently scratched out. No fingerprint, no barcode, no digital trail. But on the back, someone had carved 4 deep letters into the plastic. Host. The deeper the story goes, the less it feels like a horror story, and more like a controlled cover-up. One that hints at something older, darker, and smarter than we've ever understood. A force that doesn't just haunt, it adapts. And now we turn to the event that truly shut Ridgewater down. Not the closure in '71. Not the budget reports. Not the vague mention of decommissioning. No. There was a final incident. Something that caused emergency crews to flood the building in silence. No sirens, no reports, no press coverage. Just a convoy of unmarked vehicles that entered through the back gate and never came back out. In the next chapter, we reveal what the locals call the vanishing, the night everything inside Ridgewater went quiet. Except for the screams only one man heard. It didn't happen on a stormy night. There was no dramatic thunderclap, no warning in the skies. It was quiet, still, too still. May 13th, 1971. The last day Ridgewater Asylum was ever officially seen occupied. The day the lights inside flickered one final time, then went out. And when the sun rose the next morning, something inside had changed. By then, Ridgewater had already developed a reputation. Whispered rumors, a sharp decline in staff, medical students who never finished their rotations, an unusual number of employees transferring away from the facility mid-year. But nothing prepared the town of Red Hollow for the vanishing. That's what the locals call it now. The night the gates were chained shut. The night no one ever left the building again. And no one, not the state, not the families, not the press, was ever allowed back inside. What we know comes from fragments, witness accounts, smuggled reports, a few emergency radio recordings distorted by static and panic. On it started around 2:13 a.m. A frantic call was placed to the Red Hollow Sheriff's Department by a nurse on night shift duty. The call lasted less than 20 seconds, but in that brief moment, her voice was clear, terrified. It's not the patients, it's the walls. Something's coming out of the walls. Then silence. The line disconnected. 4 patrol units were dispatched within 15 minutes. None of them made it to the front entrance. Each car reportedly lost power a mile from the facility. One officer later wrote in his report, "It was like driving into a dead zone. Radios cut out, headlights went dim, the air felt thick, like trying to breathe through cotton." He never returned to the force. Meanwhile, residents on the southern edge of town reported strange occurrences. Their clocks stopped at exactly 2:16 a.m. Every dog began howling simultaneously. And those living closest to the woods surrounding Ridgewater claimed to hear something they described as a low moaning, like the earth itself was grieving. One couple of the lanes said they saw lights glowing faintly from the asylum rooftop, but the light wasn't coming from inside. It looked like the building was pulsing, Mr. Lane told a local news reporter years later. Like something was trying to breathe through it. Then came the convoy. Around 3:30 a.m., witnesses say between 7 to 10 unmarked black trucks rolled quietly into town, turning down a maintenance road that led behind the asylum. No headlights, no sirens. They moved fast, silent, military precision. No one knows who sent them. No license plates, no visible identification. A few locals tried to follow the trucks, but were stopped by men in suits with radios who told them, "Turn around. Nothing to see here. Facility lockdown." One brave photographer managed to snap a picture of the convoy. That photo was printed in the Red Hollow Herald the next morning. But by the afternoon, every single copy of that edition had been purchased. All unsold newspapers were collected and removed from newsstands. In the newspaper office, burned down 2 nights later. By sunrise, the asylum was still, quiet, too quiet. None of the staff came out. None of the patients. None of the emergency personnel. The gates were now chained shut from the outside. Signs hung in black letters. Property condemned. No entry. Trespassers will be prosecuted. No demolition crews were ever seen. No cleanup. Just abandonment. Almost like the place had been cut off from time. Strangely, there was no state announcement. No explanation from the Department of Health. Not even a closing notice on record. To this day, the last official paperwork regarding Ridgewater is a single fax dated April 28, 1971, 2 weeks before the vanishing, sent from the asylum to the state medical examiner's office. Its contents, one line: host beginning to localize, breach probability increasing, prepare closure. Closure of what? Years later, a former intern named Marla Dandridge, who worked at Ridgewater during her final semester at nursing school, broke her silence in a podcast interview. She had left just 3 days before the vanishing. She said the atmosphere in the asylum during those final weeks was unlike anything she'd ever felt. It wasn't fear, it was pressure, like you were being watched through something not human. She claimed patients began speaking in strange voices, repeating staff members' sentences word for word in real time. One patient, previously nonverbal, suddenly began reciting poems in Latin perfectly. Another began drawing blueprints of the basement, blueprints that later matched the leaked sub-level maps. They weren't themselves anymore, she said. They were mirrors, mimics, like something else was inside, just using them. She also recalled a strange figure visiting the asylum during her last shift. A tall man in a gray coat, no badge, no ID. He wore black gloves and carried a silver briefcase. She remembered his face because of one haunting detail. He had no eyebrows, no lashes, no expression at all, just smooth, like his face was wearing someone else's skin. She never saw him leave the building. Then there's the tape. In 2003, a paranormal investigation group illegally entered Ridgewater. What they captured still terrifies those who've watched it. At 2:14 a.m., their camera began picking up faint whispers, too low to decipher. But when the footage was reversed and enhanced, the whispers became clear. He's still breathing. He remembers you. He remembers your name. The footage ends with the team screaming, the camera dropping to the ground and cutting out in static. Only one member made it back to the car. He never spoke again. And perhaps the most terrifying part? Locals say the asylum changes. Those who approach it, even just to photograph, report different layouts. Windows in the wrong place. Hallways that curve where they were once straight. Doors where no doors should be. One visitor swore that the building moved when she blinked, like it shifted slightly to the left, warping its frame. Ridgewater is no longer just abandoned. It's alive. What caused the vanishing? Was it the final stage of an experiment gone wrong? Or did something break free that night, something never meant to see daylight? The theory gaining the most traction online is chilling. The host breached containment, and the building was sealed, not to protect us from it, but to trap it inside. But even that theory falls apart, because people say the knocking still comes from the walls. And if you stand at the gate, some swear you can hear breathing beneath the ground. Oh, a sealed confession. A family that vanished without a trace. And the final theory that connects it all, one that suggests Ridgewater wasn't just a hospital. It was a trap built for a thing we don't understand. A thing we may have created by accident. Even as the world spins indifferent to the secrets of abandoned places, some truths have a way of clawing their way back into the light. Ridgewater Asylum has been shrouded in mystery for decades, a place of lost patients, whispered experiments, and paranormal tragedies. But beneath layers of cover-ups and half-forgotten memories lies a final twist that no one could have ever imagined. For years, investigators, paranormal enthusiasts, and conspiracy theorists have pieced together fragments of the asylum's history. Dr. Adrian Wexler, the elusive doctor whose very existence is both a fact and a fabrication, left behind scattered notes that defied medical logic. The hidden sub-basement, with its cryptic room marked The Latch, became the repository for experiments that blurred the lines between science and something far more sinister. And then came the vanishing, a night when reality itself seemed to rip open, swallowing staff, patients, and even time. But the last piece of the puzzle arrived when an unassuming local archivist named Rebecca Mallory discovered a set of sealed envelopes in the county's neglected records. Rebecca had spent years sorting through forgotten blueprints, correspondence, and student theses about Ridgewater. One crisp autumn evening, tucked away in a mislabeled storage box, she uncovered something that would redefine the story of the asylum. Inside were handwritten letters addressed to Inspector H., penned by a former administrator who had worked at Ridgewater in the early 1960s. The letters detailed experimental treatments and cognitive reset initiatives, programs that had been quietly implemented on patients who were already pushed to the boundaries of sanity. But the most damning entry was not a clinical report. It was a desperate confession. They are not mistakes. They are our creation. The host isn't a rumor. It is the consequence of what we dared to control. And now it has taken over what once was us. The envelope was sealed on February 12, 1968, a date that coincided with the asylum's most desperate days. The confessor claimed to have been forced to close his eyes and accept the inevitable. The handwriting, shaky and unsteady, spoke of terror and resignation. This wasn't simply a record of unethical experiments. It was an admission of guilt, a cover-up meticulously maintained through decades of bureaucratic silence. As the layers of deception peeled away, a startling theory emerged. Ridgewater Asylum wasn't simply a place where mental illness was treated or hidden away. It was an incubator. The human mind and something else had been pushed to a breaking point. The asylum was not merely a hospital for the destitute. It was a laboratory where scientists, perhaps unwittingly or willingly, engineered a phenomenon they could neither control nor understand. This theory, which once lived on the fringe of urban legend, was finally gaining credence. When satellite imagery analysis revealed irregularities in the building's foundations, a hidden structure that did not appear on any official plans, the whispers turned into claims. This secret annex, apparently constructed in the late 1960s, under heavy security and shielded from public records, corresponded exactly with the descriptions found in Rebecca's envelopes. It was here, many believe, that the experiments reached their horrifying crescendo. Witnesses reported anomalous sounds and unexplainable phenomena in recent decades. Local residents near the asylum recalled nights when a soft, rhythmic pulse vibrated through the ground, as if a heartbeat echoed from beneath the earth. Others said that if you stood at the condemned gates at midnight, you could see a faint glow rising from the underbelly of the building, a glow that pulsed like a warning. And then there's the final twist, a secret the state and federal agencies have refused to discuss. Around the time of Ridgewater's closure, a declassified memo from a now-defunct government branch mentioned Project Host. The memo, heavily redacted and buried in top-secret archives, alluded to experiments not just with the human mind, but with what some called a living data of consciousness. The idea was radical, dangerous, and, in hindsight, chillingly plausible. Project Host was supposedly an attempt to harness latent psychic energy, an energy the asylum inadvertently nurtured. Administrators and researchers believed that by isolating the most troubled patients, they might trigger a breakthrough in human perception. But instead, this isolation may have opened a conduit for something else, something that, once awakened, refused to be contained. Testimonies of paranormal investigators who dared approach the estate in the early 2000s speak of disembodied voices on audio recordings. When these voices were spectrally isolated and cross-referenced with the old letters and memos, they eerily recited phrases that echoed the administrator's confession. "We made it, and it made us." That simple, haunting line became the rallying cry for those who believed that Ridgewater was not a failed asylum, but a catastrophic experiment, one that birthed a new form of consciousness trapped within the building's decaying walls. The final transformation of the asylum, many argue, was not of nature reclaiming space, but of the host emerging as the controlling force. The sealed corridors, the hidden sub-basement, even the very layout of the building, all of it was designed, perhaps subconsciously, to imprison and contain what had been unleashed. In the last surviving audio logs from the state archives, a single agent recounted, "The moment I stepped past the outer gate, I realized that what we contained was no longer a threat. It was a master, and it was watching." An ominous chill pervades every account. Whether it is memory or myth, the notion of a host that can manipulate sound, space, even fate itself is impossible to dismiss when every piece of evidence converges, not as the sum of isolated incidents, but as a deliberate orchestration of terror and control. Now, in the aftermath of decades of silence, questions remain. What becomes of a facility engineered to trap a living, evolving entity? Why did the government choose to sweep it under the rug instead of decommissioning it? Was Ridgewater's closure merely the final act of an inevitable cover-up to contain that which they awaken? Some say the answer lies in the final note carved into an abandoned employee ID card, "Host." Others recall the stray, barely discernible voices captured on condemned tapes. All hint toward the same terrifying conclusion. The building's closure wasn't an end, it was a beginning, a desperate attempt to lock away something that defies explanation. As we come full circle on this unsolved enigma, we must ask ourselves, what if we are not the observers of this story, but unwitting participants? Every subscription, every comment, every share of this documentary sends a ripple through the unseen forces that have haunted Ridgewater for nearly half a century. In these final moments, the truth begs us to re-examine what we accept as reality. The secrets of Ridgewater Asylum are not confined to crumbling walls or outdated case files. They continue to evolve, pulsing just beneath the surface of our modern lives. So tonight, before you log off, remember, the legacy of Ridgewater Asylum is more than just a local legend. It is a cautionary tale about the pursuit of forbidden knowledge and the costs it may exact. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of the unknown. If you've been as captivated and as unsettled as we have by Ridgewater's secrets, now is the time to let your voice be heard. Like this video if it sent chills down your spine. Comment below with your own theories. Let's unravel this mystery together. And most importantly, subscribe to the Untold Trace to be the first to witness our next dive into the mysteries that lurk at the edges of reality. Turn on notifications, because in a world where every shadow has a story, you never know when the next secret will be unearthed. This isn't just a documentary. It's an invitation to question, to search, and to confront the hidden truths that echo in the dark. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your mind sharp, and remember, some secrets, once unbound, are impossible to forget. Let the legacy of Ridgewater remind you, truth is often stranger and far more dangerous than fiction. Stay vigilant, and as always, keep tracing the untold.